Medieval philosophers spoke of res, things, percepts, and voces, voices, words, concepts. According to the nominalists, universals were voces, meaning that universals were not res, things, only individual things existed. According to Platonists, universals were real things, hence Platonism was realist. Nominalism was, therefore, anti-realist, since it denied that universals were real things. Universals were dismissed as mere words by the nominalists. Reality is all about things versus language, sensibility versus intelligibility. Language is intelligible. Sensory things are not intelligible. You cannot look at particular things and make sense of the world by that means. Observing the world is not how you gain knowledge of it. Empiricism is absurd. Extracting intelligibility from the world, via forms, ideas, universals, language, concepts, quantities, measurements, mathematics, is in fact how we make sense of the world. We can think of the world as comprising two components: 1. Things, the sensible order, and 2. Language, the intelligible order. Empiricists focus on the sensible order and rationalists on the intelligible order. Only the latter route leads to knowledge. Science believes it acquires knowledge by observing the world. That's what its method is all about. But it doesn't get knowledge that way. It acquires knowledge by applying the intelligible language of mathematics to patterns of sensory things. Yet it denies that mathematics is real, rendering science incoherent and foundationally contradictory. Science refuses to accept the ontology of mathematical language, the language of reality. Yet it's only because of this mathematical language that any things exist at all, and any sense can be made of them. What was reality like prior to the Big Bang, before there was any space, any time, any matter, any things? It was pure language, the zero-entropy language of ontological mathematics, existing at an exact temperature of absolute zero in an immaterial, dimensionless, mental singularity of frequency. It was mathematical language that produced the world of things. It was the world of universals that produced the world of particulars. It did so via the fact that universal ontological mathematical language can produce space, time, matter, entropy, temperature, gravity, and so on. Science refuses to accept that language produces things, that mind, the source of language, produces matter, the stuff that mind ponders and with which minds interacts. Science can understand none of this. Scientists don't have a sufficiently high IQ. Nor do any of the academic philosophers in today's world, all of whom are under the spell of scientism or postmodernism. Only the ontological mathematicians carry forward the truth of existence. Ontological mathematics can be called a panpsychist worldview, depending on how panpsychism is defined. Unfortunately, modern philosophy associates panpsychism with materialism, with minded matter, we might say, i.e., with material atoms with tiny, subjective, conscious minds. That's an absurd belief system. Ontological mathematics is best defined as absolute idealism or realistic idealism, meaning that the objects of the objective world aren't made up and don't disappear when you stop perceiving them, as the subjective idealist Bishop Berkeley claimed. They have true, persistent reality because they are made of definite things, sinusoidal waves, which are basis thoughts. Wikipedia says, idealism is a term with several related meanings. It comes via Latin idea from the ancient Greek idein, meaning to see. The term was first used in the abstract metaphysical sense belief that reality is made up only of ideas by Christian Wolff in 1747. In ontological mathematics, everything is made of thoughts, which are sinusoidal waves. Hence realistic, absolute idealism is simply ontological mathematics. Wikipedia says, any philosophy that assigns crucial importance to the ideal or spiritual realm in its account of human existence may be termed idealist. Metaphysical idealism is an ontological doctrine that holds that reality itself is incorporeal or experiential at its core. Beyond this, idealists disagree on which aspects of the mental are more basic. Platonic idealism affirms that abstractions are more basic to reality than the things we perceive, while subjective idealists and phenomenalists tend to privilege sensory experience over abstract reasoning. Epistemological idealism is the view that reality can only be known through ideas, that only psychological experience can be apprehended by the mind. Idealism was the main vehicle of philosophy, until it was derailed by scientific materialism. Nowadays, idealism is practically ignored intellectually. Nothing is more crucial than that humanity undergoes a paradigm shift from materialism and empiricism, using unreal mathematics, to idealism and rationalism, using real mathematics. Wikipedia says, subjective idealists like George Berkeley are anti-realists in terms of a mind-independent world, whereas transcendental idealists like Immanuel Kant are strong skeptics of such a world, affirming epistemological and not metaphysical idealism. Berkeley denied the existence of any material, mind-independent world. Kant accepted its existence but said we could know nothing about it, making it totally redundant by Occam's razor. How can you even refer to it if it is so shrouded in unknowability? How can you know it's there if you don't know anything about it and can't assign it any properties? All of Kant's successors got rid of his unknowable material world. Schopenhauer retained the noumenal/phenomenal distinction used by Kant, but converted it into a purely mental, idealist system, based on the will as the foundation of existence, with matter being a mode of representation, proceeding by way of Plato's forms and the principle of sufficient reason. The Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy says, Schopenhauer denies that our sensations have an external cause in the sense that we can know there is some epistemologically inaccessible object, the thing in itself, that exists independently of our sensations and is the cause of them. These internal problems with Kant's argument suggest to Schopenhauer that Kant's reference to the thing in itself as a mind-independent object, or as an object of any kind, is misconstrued. Schopenhauer maintains instead that if we are to refer to the thing in itself, then we must come to an awareness of it, not by invoking the relationship of causality, a relationship where the cause and the effect are logically understood to be distinct objects or events, since self-causation is a contradiction in terms, but through another means altogether. As we can see immediately in the title of his main work, The World as Will and Representation, Schopenhauer believes that the world has a double aspect, namely, as will, Wille, and as representation, Vorstellung. The German word Vorstellung can be translated as representation, presentation, idea, or mental image. Schopenhauer does not believe, then, that will causes are representations. His position is that will and representations are one and the same reality, regarded from different perspectives. Schopenhauer's view is that the relationship between the thing in itself and our sensations is more like that between two sides of a coin, neither of which causes the other, and both of which are of the same coin and coinage. In Kant's system, there is a world in itself, and minds take information from it in some mysterious way, process it, repackage it and project onto it a new phenomenal world. In Plato's system, the sensible world is a poor copy or shadow of the real, intelligible world in itself, the world of forms. In Schopenhauer's system, reality in itself is blind, striving will, and this is represented as the turbulent, phenomenal world of our experience. In science, there are only sensible phenomena, and mathematics, deemed unreal and abstract, is used to make sense of these disparate particulars and organize them by various formulae, regarding particles and forces operating on them. In ontological mathematics, reality in itself is pure frequency, mind, and it can project a space-time world, matter, an ontological hologram, within it. Do you see that everything is about trying to find the best way to relate the intelligible world to the sensible world? Self-evidently, the best way, the most rational and logical way to do this, is via a coherent, complete and consistent, monistic mathematical treatment, the exact one furnished by ontological mathematics. Wikipedia says, Plato and Gottfried Leibniz affirm an objective and knowable reality transcending our subjective awareness, a rejection of Kantian epistemological idealism, but propose that this reality is grounded in ideal entities, a form of metaphysical idealism. Nor do all metaphysical idealists agree on the nature of the ideal. For Plato, the fundamental entities were non-mental abstract forms, while for Leibniz they were proto-mental and concrete monads. Ontological mathematics combines ontological, epistemological, metaphysical and realistic idealism in an impregnable system of mathematics. Ontological mathematics reduces reality to mathematical monads made of mathematical thoughts, sinusoids. These sinusoidal thoughts are used to create everything. Wikipedia says, as a rule, transcendental idealists like Kant affirm idealism's epistemic side without committing themselves to whether reality is ultimately mental. Objective idealists like Plato affirm reality's metaphysical basis in the mental or abstract without restricting their epistemology to ordinary experience, and subjective idealists like Berkeley affirm both metaphysical and epistemological idealism. Kant pointed to a world outside mind, which can only be interpreted as the material world in itself, a somewhat incoherent idea given that materialism is all about empirical appearance. Schopenhauer converted this mysterious material world outside space and time into the mysterious mental world of the will to exist, to blindly strive. This universal will, the God will, so to speak, is expressed through countless phenomenal wills, i.e., the wills of everything in the world, with each physical thing being a representation of its associated phenomenal will. Underneath, all individual phenomenal wills belong to the one noumenal will, immaterial and outside space and time. One cosmic will manifests itself as a multiplicity of wills associated with the phenomenal world of representation. Like his Buddhist influences, Schopenhauer disbelieved in individual eternal minds, souls, and supported an ever-changing system of impermanence and suffering. Ontological mathematics affirms both metaphysical and epistemological idealism, all framed mathematically. Ordinary experience is irrelevant to the system. The system can be worked out entirely in analytic a priori terms, without a single observation of the world. The Encyclopaedia Britannica says, idealism, in philosophy, is any view that stresses the central role of the ideal or the spiritual in the interpretation of experience. It may hold that the world or reality exists essentially as spirit or consciousness, that abstractions and laws are more fundamental in reality than sensory things, or, at least, that whatever exists is known in dimensions that are chiefly mental, through and as ideas. Ontological mathematics achieves for idealism what abstract mathematics achieved for materialism, making it quantitative, and expressing it through invaluable predictive formulae. Ontological mathematics makes idealism a rigorous, logical, rational, quantitative system that can produce formulae for any observed sensory patterns. The Encyclopaedia Britannica says, thus, the two basic forms of idealism are metaphysical idealism, which asserts the ideality of reality, and epistemological idealism, which holds that in the knowledge process the mind can grasp only the psychic or that its objects are conditioned by their perceptibility. In its metaphysics, idealism is thus directly opposed to materialism, the view that the basic substance of the world is matter and that it is known primarily through and as material forms and processes. Materialism is the biggest fallacy humanity has ever had to endure. It's even more false than mainstream religion. The most stupid explanation ever tendered for why things exist is that they randomly created themselves out of nothing at all, yet this is what materialism claims, for fear of referring to any eternal and necessary immaterial order, i.e., an order of the mind, or order of God. Materialism must do anything to avoid the conclusion that it was preceded by mind or God. So, if it cannot claim that matter is eternal, then it has to claim instead that matter came from nowhere for no reason, and it prefers this insane claim to logically concluding that matter is a product of mind or God. The Encyclopaedia Britannica says, in its epistemology, idealism is opposed to realism, which holds that in human knowledge objects are grasped and seen as they really are, in their existence outside and independently of the mind. It's totally false that idealism is opposed to realism. This is the sort of nonsense that ignorant materialists spout. Ontological mathematics supports total realism, the most absolute realism you can get. Everything in the world exists as a real thing, made of sinusoidal waves. The objective world exists as a solid, ontological hologram, nothing like a Star Wars hologram, within the collection of all minds, and all objects in this world have enduring reality. Things don't vanish if people stop perceiving them, as Bishop Berkeley ridiculously claimed, giving idealism a terrible name and associating it with fantasy rather than reality. The Encyclopaedia Britannica says, as a philosophy often expressed in bold and expansive syntheses, idealism is also opposed to various restrictive forms of thought, to skepticism, to logical positivism, which stresses observable facts and relations and therefore spurns the speculative pretensions of every metaphysics, and sometimes to atheism, since the idealist sometimes extrapolates the concept of mind to embrace an infinite mind. Only idealism can rationally defend a religious and spiritual worldview. Only idealism can give existence a meaning, purpose and point. Only idealism can render reality intelligible and knowable and give it an absolute answer. And only idealism is rational and logical. For absolute idealism, truth is the whole, truth is the absolute. The Encyclopaedia Britannica says, the reciprocity argument, subject and object are reciprocally dependent upon each other. It is impossible to conceive of a subject without an object, since the essential meaning of being a subject is being aware of an object, and that of being an object is being an object to a subject, that relation being absolutely and universally reciprocal. Consequently, every complete reality is always a unity of subject and object, i.e., an immaterial ideality, a concrete universal. This is a crucial consideration. A mind, a subject, inherently produces objects. That's what minds do. They make objects out of their own thoughts. Dreams perfectly illustrate the process. You use your thoughts to create entire dream worlds. According to scientific materialism, objects can somehow produce subjects, although it never explains how. The logic of materialism is that reality should comprise nothing but pointless objects that are never subjectively known and could literally exist forever without anyone or anything ever knowing of their existence. Literally producing a meaningless, purposeless and pointless reality, a reality with no reason for its existence. Such a reality could never exist. A reality that cannot know itself is an impossible reality. When reality is an expression of the principle of sufficient reason, reality must have a reason for its existence. That reason is to express reason to the fullest, and that necessarily entails reason becoming self-aware. Reason must know itself. Imagine a universe full of lifeless, mindless material atoms that simply collide with each other forever and never produce any life, mind, subjectivity, or consciousness, literally a pointless, meaningless, purposeless existence, existence for the sake of existence, but actually functionally no different from non-existence, which is also pointless, meaningless, and purposeless. Scientists actually believe in pointless, meaningless, purposeless existence, no different from non-existence. For them, it's a stupendous accident that life and mind appeared in the universe, and has absolutely no significance. It's all meaningless. There is no reason for existence and non-existence to be functionally the same, yet lifeless, mindless matter is functionally equivalent to non-existence since it has no consequences at all. Matter cannot be the means of distinguishing existence from non-existence since there would actually be no means in a purely material world to distinguish anything from anything. Occam's razor says that if two situations are functionally indistinguishable, the simplest must always be preferred. Pointless non-existence would always be selected over pointless existence since non-existence needs to do nothing to be pointless, whereas pointless material existence has to go to all the trouble of pointlessly existing and pointlessly doing things to be pointless. For existence to be distinguishable from non-existence, it must have a point. Matter offers no point, so existence cannot be material. The only alternative to matter is mind. Therefore, existence is mental. Mental existence has a point. It can actually experience itself, experience meaning, purpose, a point. It can be aware of itself, know itself. It can strive. It can exercise self-determinism, free will. It can express itself. It can optimize itself. It can solve itself. The PSR delivers all of that, and the PSR is the exact definition of mental existence. Only minds engage in reasoning. Matter does not. There is a simple choice: non-existence or existence equals the PSR. If the PSR couldn't exist, there would only be non-existence. There would be no reason for existence, and so there wouldn't be existence. The PSR, however, can exist only if it requires nothing, just as non-existence does. If it required anything more than nothing, it would be impossible. Non-existence would always beat it due to its lower requirements. The PSR, therefore, simply is nothing, structured, mathematical nothing, which is to say something that eternally and necessarily equals nothing. That's what monadic minds are all about. These are the authors of matter, which is therefore also reducible to nothing since it originates in nothing. So, all of this means that a non-mental reality is strictly impossible. A material world is logically forbidden. Materialism is unquestionably false. The presence of life and mind in our world prove that existence is alive and mental. Lifeless matter could never produce life, and mindless matter could never produce mind. Objective matter could never produce subjects capable of being aware of matter. A reality without subjects cannot happen. Yet this is exactly what materialists believe in. Materialists loathe subjectivity, awareness, consciousness. If they didn't, they wouldn't be materialists. Materialists are sensing types. They are bitterly opposed to thinking types. Thinking types invariably gravitate to idealism. What could be more real and obvious to a thinking type than that the world is literally made of thought, is literally a thinking organism, thinking its way to its own optimization, to its own answer? The Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy says, within modern philosophy there are sometimes taken to be two fundamental conceptions of idealism: 1. Something mental, the mind, spirit, reason, will, is the ultimate foundation of all reality, or even exhaustive of reality. 2. And although the existence of something independent of the mind is conceded, everything that we can know about this mind-independent reality is held to be so permeated by the creative, formative, or constructive activities of the mind, of some kind or other, that all claims to knowledge must be considered, in some sense, to be a form of self-knowledge. Idealism in sense 1 has been called metaphysical or ontological idealism, while idealism in sense 2 has been called formal or epistemological idealism. Ontological mathematics is both metaphysical, ontological, idealism and epistemological idealism, but without any reference to any mind-independent reality. Any such thing is epistemologically incoherent, as demonstrated by Kant's philosophy, where core reality was rendered unknowable by Kant's supposed epistemology. More like an anti-epistemology, how not to know anything. The Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy says, the modern paradigm of idealism in sense 1 might be considered to be George Berkeley's immaterialism, according to which all that exists are ideas and the minds, less than divine or divine, that have them. Berkeley himself did not use the term idealism. Descartes was a dualist. Leibniz was the first modern idealist, but his early thinking reflected many dualist strands, and so, historically, he is not unambiguously associated with idealism. The Stanford Encyclopedia says, Leibniz's monadology could be seen as a forerunner of both epistemological and ontological arguments for idealism, but he did not himself unequivocally affirm idealism. The first unambiguous modern idealist was Bishop Berkeley, whose entire philosophy concerned the denial of the existence of matter, hence why he called his philosophy immaterialism. No one denied the reality of matter more exhaustively than Berkeley. He went as far as to say that objects did not exist if they were not being perceived. This idea did tremendous damage to idealism, since it associated idealism with anti-realism, with subjective dreaming and fantasy. Ontological mathematics rectifies this problem by grounding idealism in mathematical realism. Objects in collective, objective spacetime are real. They do not vanish when you are not looking at them. The vanishing act is true only in your private dreams where objects exist only while they are present to you. The Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy says, the fountainhead for idealism in sense, too, might be the position that Immanuel Kant asserted, according to which idealism does not concern the existence of things, but asserts only that our modes of representation of them, above all space and time, are not determinations that belong to things in themselves but features of our own minds. Kant called his position transcendental and critical idealism, and it has also been called formal idealism. This is pseudo-idealism. Kant still held onto the notion of a non-mental real world. This aspect of his thinking was a glaring anomaly. It was jettisoned by all of his philosopher successors. Why was philosophical idealism killed off? Its assassin was scientific materialism. Thanks to science's use of quantitative mathematics, it beat philosophical idealism hands down. But all that changes if idealism embraces mathematics too. That's exactly what ontological mathematics achieves. It delivers a quantitative version of idealism, compatible with the realism of sensory objects, i.e., matter in ontological mathematics is not something airy-fairy, but all too phenomenally real. However, it is mind-created matter, not scientific matter, independent of mind. The Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy says, Kant's position does not provide a clear model of idealism at all. While Kant himself claimed that his position combined empirical realism with transcendental idealism, that is, combined realism about external, spatio-temporal objects in ordinary life and science with the denial of the reality of space and time at the level of things as they are in themselves, it also insisted upon the reality of things as they are in themselves existing independently from our representations of them, thus denying their reducibility to representations of the minds that have them. In this way, Kant's position actually combines the transcendental ideality of space and time with a kind of realism about the existence of things other than minds. Kant posited mental matter, phenomenal matter, but supposedly with a real material substrate. Ontological mathematics removes the supposed material substrate. Matter is entirely mental. In modern quantum mechanics, matter is something to do with wave functions. In ontological mathematics, matter is entirely concerned with wave functions and has no other reality. These wave functions are mental functions. In scientific quantum mechanics, wave functions are unreal, non-local abstractions, associated with probabilities. In ontological mathematics, the wave functions are ontologically real and deterministic. They are not abstract and probabilistic. They are not mired in randomness. Should idealism have been called mentalism or mindism? Mentalism, based on mind. The mental produces the material. Materialism, based on matter. The material produces the mental. The mental is associated with the intelligible. The material is associated with the sensible. Intelligent people focus on the intelligible order. The unintelligent are transfixed by the sensible order. They are sensing types, not thinking types.